within all of us, like we have these different voices. And the key is to remember that like we are not our thoughts, right? And so like, and a lot of times our thoughts are coming from different parts of ourselves.
Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I am your host. My name is Karolina, and I am the connection catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the universe. Today on the show, we have Jenn Lee, the transformational and psychospiritual coach. Welcome to the show, Jenn. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here. So great to be here.
Oh, it is. I'm super glad to talk to you because I know that we have a lot of cool topics that we can talk about. And as I told you before we started recording, I just came out of running a heart opening ceremony. So I just feel so open now. My heart is so filled up that I feel like it's perfect timing to talk to you and to transfer this energy on the podcast to everyone who listens. And so, yeah, it's just freaking great. So, speaking of the heart, I would love to start with this one topic that I know that you know something about, and it is Ho'oponopono meditation. Because sometimes I also on these ceremonies I introduce this meditation, and sometimes I do it in a way that you channel a parent for someone, and you really interact with this type of meditation with each other, so that you can really release the energy doing this. And it's just a really I would really love to start with that because I know that this prayer can be quite powerful. But I would love to know your perspective. How do you feel, and why do you feel it is so powerful to do this and to use it? And how do you personally utilize this prayer? Because I know that some people utilize it for healing, as I said, like in some group settings or relationship settings, but also I feel like it can be really used with going through some emotions inside and just really loving the parts of you and praying for the parts of you that feel uncomfortable emotions, or even to change beliefs. So how do you utilize this prayer? Please tell me, I'm so curious.
Oh, good question. And I love that you just came from a heart opening energy, because I've come from a heart opening retreat. And so I love that you started with this question. It's been amazing because I think for me personally, one of the biggest things I've struggled with is self love. And after I did a little video sharing this very simple prayer, and it's 4 sentences, and I personally like to do it in the mirror, right? And in the morning and at night. And I even talk to my clients about this, of like looking into your eyes and really saying the words, I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you, I love you, right? And it's just such simple words. And I think that for so many of us, we have been conditioned to give, right? And so we give all our energy to other people. We're helping, do everything for everyone else. Yet with ourselves, like I know for myself, like I was always my biggest critic, and I would always be so negative with myself. And I remember it was such a perspective shift when someone, mentioned to me like, oh, like if you could hear yourself talking to yourself as if it's a mother speaking to a daughter, or two friends, like how would that make you feel? And it was like, whoa, like why would I wouldn't allow that to happen, so why am I doing that to myself? And like really understanding how powerful our thoughts are. And even if it's in that has actually been a big theme for me recently. It's like, get out of my head and into my heart, right? And as I'm in my head and I'm analyzing and I'm critical and I'm judgmental, and those thoughts have so much energy and so much power. So we have to like really be aware of how we're using it, even to ourselves. So just standing in front of the mirror and looking ourselves straight in the eye can be such a huge practice. And I know for a recent client of mine, it was just so powerful that he was like getting teary eyed, because it's like he doesn't give himself that same love that he gives to everyone else. So, yeah, that's how I like to use it.
Oh, yes, this is amazing. I love that. And I've been also using it on myself, and I can really feel that the first you need to forgive yourself before you can forgive others. And first you need to really let go of what you're holding against yourself, all the resistance that you have towards yourself, because then you can also spill it over to other people. So if you can bring compassion, understanding, and all these beautiful emotions towards yourself, love, then you can really fill your own cup, and then it's overflowing from you, which is really, really amazing. And
Yeah,
it's, yeah, you
you
go.
no, no, yeah, and you make a good point about forgiving yourself, but like it's like loving your like if you can't love yourself, how can you expect anyone to love you? And that's all like we're all looking for that, right? As humans, as animals, like we want love. And so the first and foremost is like starting with ourselves. So yeah, great point.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because then if you still resist love towards yourself, your heart chakra cannot be fully open, because there is some, no, energy is not flowing that much. But if you love yourself, you start there, then you can easily just like radiate it all over. And this is exactly what I did today on the heart opening ceremony. And it's so cool that you're talking about
Ah,
being receptive and like actually giving it to yourself, because we did this little exercise that I learned once on a workshop with Teal Swan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but yeah,
yes.
she's
Uh-huh.
my favorite spiritual
Definitely.
leader. So yeah, we did this exercise of positive focus and receptivity, where we were standing in the circle and one person was in the middle of the circle, and then each person in the row in the circle had to give compliments and say something kind and loving to this person, and the person in the middle had to just receive, not even say thank you, not even give hugs, nothing, just inhale the
Mm.
compliment, inhale the kindness and the love. And it was so hard for people, like people were crying, especially the ones that have like, people pleasing kind of tendencies. They sometimes feel like they only need to give and they always need to give, right, in order to receive. But here it was like, no, just stay with it, just receive. And it can be so healing for people to just look into their eyes and tell them something kind. It can be so empowering, so opening up. And I just feel like it's so crazy how such a simple exercise as just giving compliments to each other and looking into each other's eyes while doing it can be so transformative and so opening, right, for people, because we don't do it enough, not only for ourselves but also for others. I feel like, why? Why don't we do that? Our world would be such a great place to live in if everyone just appreciated each other, and if everyone gave each other compliments and told them how amazing, how beautiful they are. And that's why I'm so full of energy, because I received from so many people. I was doing this exercise too, and I just feel like I received so much gratitude and love. I'm like, wow, I love my life, I love the world, I love all of you guys, and I just feel like I'm overflowing with this. And I love you too, Jen. And yeah, I just feel like I
I
love every
love
human being.
you.
Amazing. Oh my
Oh,
god, this is
that's
so good.
so beautiful. Oh, great, Karolina. I love your energy, and this is exactly like the work that is so inspiring, right? Because there is an abundance of love out there, right? And if we can like shift that perspective, and it's like, oh my goodness, and yeah, wow, what a beautiful exercise. I love Teal Swan. I actually just shared a recent video that she talked about not taking any action until all your parts are in alignment, right? And Karolina, I feel like with you and doing this podcast, I can feel it, right? Everything is in alignment. And I'm not sure your whole journey to get here, but it probably took some work to kind of figure that out. And look at look at the energy, and I can feel it, right? And it's like amazing. And if we can all find that, where we're blocked in our chakras, right? Like, and that's what I'm actually working on. I have blockages between my solar plexus and my heart, and it's so important to clear that, because if we come from a space of pure love, like look at what can happen. And oh wow, that exercise of receiving, I totally get that, because I catch myself when someone gives me a compliment, right? Instead of just saying thank you, I receive. It's like I have to like throw it back with the compliment back to them, right? And that's so common. And I noticed that too, like with other people. And you mentioned people pleasing. And that is like, I'm actually reading this book right now called No More Mr. Nice Guy. One of my clients asked me to like be his like safe partner as he goes through this, and I realized like that book has been on my radar for a while, because I was in a program called Fit for Service, and a bunch of the guys had read it, and I looking at my past relationships. And then it was just like, he was like, hey, can you be my safe partner with this? I'm like, oh my goodness, this is such a good reason to read the book. And I just like, I'm only a few chapters in, but I've been highlighting everything, but it talks about like that whole idea where we are just people pleasing, because as children, that's how we gain love, and that's where a lot of this stems from. And it goes back to like the Industrial Revolution, to higher divorce rates. Fathers were going into the office as opposed to like working on the farms with their sons. And then you have like the education system dominated by women. And so it's like you have like through the eyes of the feminine, like we're being raised of like, and it's like getting love through being pleasing, and that's what we learned as a child. And so it's really hard for us to like really receive, and that's such a powerful exercise. So I'm so happy that you got to experience that right before this podcast and bring that energy to this and to the rest of the world.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just absolutely amazing. And I love running these ceremonies because when I'm also facilitating, I'm getting so rewarded by all this energy and people opening up and crying. And like, I always have a good cry on these ceremonies. And then I'm like, yes, okay, something broke through. And it's actually pretty amazing to do that. And so I actually have a question about the criticism, because we were mentioning, like, you have a lot of criticism and judgments towards yourself if you don't love yourself fully, and also if you have all these parts of you that you resist. So what would you say is the best method to cope with this inner critic? How would you guide your client, maybe, who struggles with it a lot and judges himself or herself a lot?
Ooh, well, that's a hard one. It's really important. The first thing would be to bring awareness to it. So, like, one of the things I would say is like, journaling has been one of the most powerful habits that I just started doing in 2020. One of my coaches, Eric Godsey from Fit for Service, he has this amazing journaling course, and it like changed my life, because I used to never be a writer, and I would like try and write, and like I'll write 2 sentences. I'm like, oh, this is crap. But it was like this 30-day class, and I did it with other people, and like I finally broke through, because I was like, guys, like I can't write. Like what? Like I'm just like, oh, this is silly, da da da. And they're like, write exactly that. Like, because we have so many thoughts going through our head, right? So it's like, write down every single thought that you can think of. So I started doing that, and it finally like broke through, and I do like 20 minutes a day for 30 days. And then now I'm like on 8 journals. And like in that journaling course, there's like a couple prompts. And one of the prompts, which it's funny, because I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Herman's Head. It's like, it was like a very, very old show. And it's like with, it basically was like 5 people in this guy's head. And the show was about the 5 people like talking about like what they're going to say, right? And within all of us, like we have these different voices. And the key is to remember that like we are not our thoughts, right? And so like, and a lot of times our thoughts are coming from different parts of ourselves. So by like, one of the exercises was to like identify, like as you start journaling every day, and you can like kind of reflect, you will notice like you have different personalities that come up, right? And
Mhm.
so, it could be the one that's like your biggest cheerleader, the one that's like, yeah, you can do it, motivated. And then it could be the one that's like hypercritical. And usually that critical voice is usually like a mother or father that was like critical, and we like internalize that criticism within ourselves. And then like I like, for one, this is really embarrassing, but I'm going to share it with you. I don't know if you've ever watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but
Yes.
there's the two, there's like the two like really bratty girls. One is like Violet, and the one that turns into the big blueberry, and one is called Ruka, and she's like, Daddy, I want an Oompa Loompa now. I can't do the voice quite, but and I like named one of my parts Ruka Violet, like both of them, the two bratty girls together, and I have that side within me, because I grew up as an only child, and so like, and I like realize like, oh, if I don't get my way, or that part of me comes out. And so like the first is like, oh, getting that awareness. And then as you start to, and obviously like things like meditation is really, really powerful. Like having a consistent practice of meditation was something where I could really like become the observer of my thoughts, right? And then so that when I notice any negativity is coming up, like putting a name to it, and then getting curious as to why, where is that coming from, and usually it's like, if we can like really get curious and start asking why, it's usually from some event when we were younger, and like we are like afraid, of like repeating that or having that same disappointment happen again. And so that's where that kind of criticism comes in. And then it's like talking to ourselves about it, right? And it's like, how would a parent talk to that child about it? And then like really starting to, yeah, the key is just getting that awareness and kind of rewriting that story of like, and just making sure that you are always like changing that story to spin it in a positive way every time you get awareness. And it's just a practice that you get better and better at as the more you do it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like I have so many things in my mind right now based on what you just said, because I also feel like, oh, I'm not really a writer. I don't really feel like journaling is my thing. And if I do this kind of work, for example, with my clients or with myself, I'm more, again, I'm using Tilson methods a lot. So I'm channeling the parts of me. For example, the part of me that criticizes me, I'm like sitting on one chair, taking on only this part, and then maybe talking on the camera or talking to a friend as this part. And I'm just like more moving it through me and then realizing what are the needs, what are the roles, and so on. And I know that it can have a very similar effect as journaling it, right, and writing it down. It can be the same. It's just about discovering what is residing in your subconscious mind and making it conscious for yourself. But it really gets me curious about myself. If I started actually journaling and actually be like, okay, I'm gonna write 20 minutes a day for 30 days, if that could potentially change my life as well, because so many people talk about journaling. I just haven't discovered yet that it's a method for me, but maybe it will be. Now you inspired me to try, because yeah, many people say like, okay, you can really dive deep into yourself, and I just feel like I have my methods of doing that just in a different way. But it could be really powerful to do this, because sometimes you can automatically even write something that you don't know that you're gonna write, right? Because it's like a download from your subconscious or superconscious mind. So I think it's really, really beautiful. And thank you for sharing, because you're really inspiring me to try and do it.
Karolina, honestly, like if meditation has been a huge habit for me, but like journaling has like changed my life in so many ways, and I think like everyone can benefit from it. I specifically like, Eric Godsey's also a good friend of mine, and I just trust him so much after spending a year, with him with Fit for Service. He as my coach, and I know like he has researched all the courses, or a lot of the courses out there, like, and he has, because there's like a lot of good ones. Like Jordan Peterson has a self authoring course. I know Dr. Nicole LaPera has like a future journaling course, and then there's Julia Cameron with the morning pages, and so she has a whole journaling thing, and her whole thing is like 20 minutes in the morning stream of consciousness, right? And it's like just like writing out like whatever is on your mind, like first thing in the morning. And the thing is, like, we have like all this stuff like going and I'm sure like you probably have all these like different activities and things you want to accomplish, and so it's just like boom, it gets it out onto paper. And then
Mhm.
like it doesn't just stay in our mind. And also it's like for a lot of people, at least for me, and maybe probably people newer on the spiritual journey, like I realized for so long I had never been honest with myself about certain things.
Oh,
And
yes.
so like real like, yeah, and like and with Eric Godsey, what he's created in the 30 days is like looking at the past looking at the present and then going into the future, right? And it's like, he has something called like this his pyramid triangle, and really like getting down to like what your future vision is. And it's like one of the most impactful journaling prompts in there was like imagining the last day of your life. Okay. And it's like, oh, I don't know if you're familiar with Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung, like,
Yes.
who is, yes, psychologist and psychiatrist. And he, he influenced a lot of the stuff that I've been reading, and the same with Eric Godzi. And Eric had us read his obituary, right? Of like everything he accomplished in his life. And then we had to write our own obituary. And I'm not sure what it's like in Poland, but in the US, and I feel like I also lived in Australia for 10 years as well. And I think in a lot of Western countries, like death is not like, it's like we don't talk about it, right? We don't want to think about it. And I think that that's why it's so hard for people, and people have so many regrets, because it's like we want to avoid this topic. Whereas I think in a lot of indigenous cultures, and in South America and in Asia, like there's much more a different view of death. And so like in this journaling prompt, it's like, okay, write your obituary, like write down what you want to be remembered for when you leave this life, right? And then you're going to write down the last day of your life. Write down who you're with, where you're at, and how are you going to spend it. And then it's like your potential comes up to you and looks you in the eye. Can you look it in the eye and say, I did the best that I could? And because like I think for so many of us, it's so easy to go day to day and just like and we don't like take a step back and think about the big picture, like think about our why, right? And once we have that vision of like, oh crap, this is like my one precious life, right? This is like what I want to accomplish. Okay, so like what do I need to do to get it? And so it like works, then we can work backwards on that. So yeah, so I think
Wow.
that definitely, like, especially to not only that, then I started to like with, especially like if I'm sure you're wanting to impact a lot of people, and it's amazing to do it through podcasting. And then another avenue is through your writing, right? And so like Instagram captions became a lot easier for me. I used to spend so long just analyzing one caption, and then same with like I started a newsletter on January 1st, and I was like, I'm not a writer, but like it just is like anything else, we can like learn how to be better at it once we practice it. And now, because like I'm like, eventually I'd like to write a book. I don't know what about yet, but I want to get into that practice. And so like that change of journaling like has really opened up all these new doors for me. So I definitely highly recommend it.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm so grateful you shared this because I'm thinking, yeah, if I think of the last day of my life and what I would want to accomplish, like this podcast is one of the steps to get me there for sure. Because this podcast is just a ground for building the SoulFam app, that is a social networking app for conscious people all over the world. So that's the first step on in my and my best friend's journey. So yeah, this is what I'm thinking of. Like if I was, on the last day of my life, I would be like high fiving with Ricky and my ex partner and dear friend. That we did it and we made it the freaking biggest conscious social networking app in the world. That's what I would want to see. So thank you for sharing that, because that's why it feels so aligned for me to do this podcast, because it feels like the vision is there and I know why I'm doing this, and this is amazing to bring value in this way. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely start journaling more after what you shared, because this is really like it can bring up the stuff that we would never see otherwise if we can really sit with it with the paper and pen and really just allow ourselves to go in our psyche. I feel like it could be really, really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I actually have
Yeah.
a funny story to tell you about the Fit for Service, because you said that you were a member there, and maybe if you could just quickly say to all the people who don't know what Fit for Service is. Can you share like what it is and why we're talking about this? Because I think it's awesome.
Yeah, Aubrey Marcus started Fit for Service in 2019, and in its first year, it was to build a community of about 150 people. And in before we are now so in living as individuals, but like we really thrive as communities. And so the idea was to create a community of 150 people. It started off as like a way to optimize spiritually, financially, physically, and mentally together. And it was like a year-long program, and there you would meet up for 4 summits a year, and then every month you would have group calls with Aubrey and then with all the different coaches. And I joined in 2020, which and every year they changed the theme, and they're always teaching what's alive in them. So it's not like just the same content every year. And for me in 2020, it was all about the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell. And so like going through that whole process, and that was like such a powerful year. And in that year we had 3 summits and 3 meetups. And I was actually living in Australia at the time. I had been there for 10 years and knew I had to like make a change and leave. And so I quit my job in March, and I had just come back from Tulum, was our very first summit. And to be honest, I was so overwhelmed, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm in the right place. And because like I had been introduced to Aubrey Marcus from an ex-partner of mine, and he just like changed my whole perspective on life, because I was in a bit of a dark place, and kind of like, like what is the purpose of life? And I felt like there were like 2 directions you could take it, right? There was either the capitalist model of like getting to the top and like becoming the CEO or entrepreneur and stepping on everyone along the way, in order to like have the wealth and all that. Or it was like you're in this spiritual world, or you volunteering, and it's like you give, and then you're like you have nothing, right? There was like the 2 extremes. And it's like he was the first to really show me like what conscious capitalism is and what it could look like, that you can succeed, and that there is abundance in the world, and you can do it by being a good person, and like just sharing so vulnerably. His like podcast, like I was just like blown away, because I had been going through, like I made some really terrible mistakes with relationships, and I was like in all this guilt and shame. And like hearing his podcast with his partner at the time, Whitney Miller, like it was really like life changing for me. And then like now I've just moved to Austin, like Texas, which is where Aubrey Marcus had started On It, which is a gym, but it's more than a gym. It's also there's supplements, and it's like a whole holistic lifestyle, and it's based out of Austin. And I've been kind of traveling around for a while, and I got the clear message recently that I need to like get very rooted and grounded. And I've only been here for a little over a month, and there's just such a huge spiritual community coming here, and it is like there's this energy through here. It's just giving me hope for a better world. I mean, if you just kind of focus on TV and the news and what society is saying, it's like really, it could be very depressing, and it could be really hard to like feel like any positive change can be made. And I think it's so important to like really become aware of like what you're allowing into your headspace. And like if you surround yourself with people who are so committed to making the world a better place, like from their heart, to being of service, and back to fit for service, it's like if you want to be of service, you have to become fit for service, right? And it's like filling your own cup first, like, and it's about healing yourself. And that's like a journey that all of us have the potential to do, right? And because all of us are born with as soon as we're born into this world, we have trauma, especially like hospitals and all, I won't get into all that, but like there's, that's just what life is. And so we can choose this path of healing ourselves. And the best way to do it, in my opinion, and the fastest way is through community. And so that's what what Fit for Service focuses on, is like creating this container that's so safe and so vulnerable, where you can be in your complete truth and talk about all the things that you're ashamed about, or you're fearful about, or you're, whatever it is that you have internalized. And as you like let those things go, it's actually about unlearning all the things that society has like taught. And it like just kind of teaches you to think for yourself and to be a sovereign individual. So yeah, that's my
Whoa,
long-winded answer.
amazing. That's amazing. And it's actually so cool that we're talking about this, because last year I was traveling with my partner and ex-partner Ricky, that I mentioned before, and we were in Dominican Republic for like a month, and then we were only there really by ourselves, just hanging out with each other. We didn't really have any people there, and then we came from Dominican Republic to Costa Rica, and I was like, oh, I really would like to do San Pedro in Costa Rica. Let's set an intention that we do San Pedro when we come there. And then one day, maybe within like 3 days or 4 days when we arrived, I was just walking the street. I'm like, I'm really fulfilled in my life. I really love my life and I love my relationship, but I feel like something is missing. Like some other people, connection to other people is missing. And I was just going to the beach with this intention, like, universe, please bring me some more people into my life. Like I really feel like I need some soul-based connections. And then I went to the beach in Tamarindo, Costa Rica, and I saw this bunch of people, maybe like 10, 15 people doing rape on the beach. I'm like, ooh, my kind of people there. I can see this. And then I went to the water. I'm swimming, and then one of these girls,
Is this
Melanie,
March last year?
it was, yeah, March. Yeah, it was March. And then Melanie comes to the water, and then I was like, did you guys do rapid ceremony? It's like, yeah. I'm like, do you know anyone who does San Pedro? And she just started laughing. She's like, Brian, this girl is asking if someone does San Pedro. And Brian's like, yeah, we're doing one on Tuesday. And then I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then Christy, another girl, asks me like, so what do you do? I'm like, I work with inner child and whatever. And she's like, what the hell? This is like an opening ceremony for an inner child healing retreat. And I'm like, what? And there was just so much alignment. And then me and Ricky ended up just hanging out with the whole Fit for Service crew for another month, and just doing all kinds of ceremonies with them, and just like having all these
With
amazing
Jason?
parties on the top of the hill and everything. And I'm guessing you were there for some time as well, if you're so excited about this.
Is that okay? That's so funny. Okay, the first person you mentioned was Melanie, right?
Yeah.
Melanie Barrett. And the funny story is, like, I mentioned Tulum, right, being in Fit for Service, and I actually remember Melanie. We were both on the hammocks, and I met her for the first time, and we're like, where are you from California. We're in California, and we were like, San Jose, and then like, where, and then, oh, and then what, high school, wait, what, we went to the same high school, what, junior high, what, same junior high, we're 1 year apart, we had never met, right? And we were same junior high, same high school. We know the same people, and we met in Tulum through Fit for Service. I shared a photo, and one of my best guy friends, Jeff, was like, "Oh, Jenn, that's Melanie. She lives like down the street from me, and Jeff lives 5 minutes from me." And we're like, it's just crazy. So I love that Melanie was the first person that you met in Fit for Service.
Yes,
Oh,
and it
I
was
had no idea that's.
it was so cool,
Is
because
that
like
how
I
you found
literally
me?
felt like I just felt like I manifested this, because I like, please universe, bring me a lot of spiritual people that I really want, that I really can connect deep with. And also the San Pedro intention, and everything just fell into place, and I felt so held by this community. I felt so welcome. I felt like everyone is so loving and so just amazing. And I would really love to join the program for sure at some point when I have a little more space and time in my life, because I feel like this is what we need. Exactly as you said, this community where everyone can be vulnerable and share exactly how they feel. And so many traumas people have gone through during this time, this month, that the Fit for Service crew was there, and I feel like it was so connecting. And one of the reasons why I loved being in Costa Rica so much is just hanging out with these guys, because yeah, I feel like all of the people who join this program are amazing. And so for anyone who listens and feels lonely, maybe you should go and find it, because it can be truly amazing. And as you said, healing through community is so powerful, because as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, it's like you can receive a compliment and it can completely change your energy. It can completely change how you see yourself. If the compliment is emotionally charged, it can really change your beliefs about yourself. If everyone around you believes in you, you're automatically at some point going to believe in yourself too, right? So if you have these people who are loving, who are compassionate, who are caring, and who make you feel okay with being vulnerable, with feeling however you feel, then you can really find peace and love and joy in your life, I believe. So yeah, it's just amazing to talk about it. I just love sharing this story because it's such a freaking manifestation thing for me. It's one of my best manifestations that happened, because it happened so quickly. From the thinking of it to the beach, and maybe it was like within 1 hour, I got exactly what I wanted. So funny. um but
That
yeah.
is amazing story.
Yeah, I freaking love it. And so I actually have a
Well,
question yeah.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like, when you say manifestation, it's when, like, it sounds crazy to people probably not in the spiritual community, but after seeing it happen with so many Fit for Service people, it's like when you start to really follow your heart and you start doing that work and you are doing what's in alignment, when you put those thoughts out there, like, things happen quickly. Like, that's a perfect example of like manifestation at its best, because you have been doing the work and you've been following your heart, and doing all the things, and so boom, there you go. So that's such a
Yes.
beautiful, I just wanted to make that realization.
Thank you. Yeah, and it always happens when you are in this uplifted and open and receptive state of mind, because if you are worried or scared or doubtful or whatever, then the manifestation flow cannot come to you, because you're kind of like closing the gates through which the universe can give you what you want and what you need, because you just like focus on your worry or doubt rather than focusing like, I'm abundant and the universe loves me. So yeah, this is just amazing. And I have
Yeah.
one little question that I actually wanted to ask at the very beginning, but we're gonna ask it almost at the very end. What does psychospiritual coach mean to you?
Well, it's a mix of psychology and spirituality. So those are like the two areas that I am most passionate about. So I don't know if you follow much about Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist.
Yes.
She's on, yeah. Well, like, she's like blown up, right? Like, she's like now has like millions of followers. But I, for a long time, and I actually am contemplating still getting my master's, potentially PhD in psychology. I'm really like, I know that, like, you can go into the coaching space and you don't need that education. And um, psychology is just something that has always interested me, and like how the mind works. And the more that I've gone into Fit for Service, the more that I'm doing this healing work, I'm like, oh my goodness, like all these things that we are so hard on ourselves about, or all the things that like stop us from becoming our best selves, like, if we can like break it down, and like it's like, oh, it's all like psychology. And then, but like combining that with spirituality, because I think in the Western world there's such a there's not the connection between mind, body, and spirit. And and after I traveled, I did a whole gap year and traveled all over South America and Southeast Asia, and like Australia, New Zealand, Fiji. And like after all my travels, I like am coming back here, and I don't know if you know much about human design, um,
A little bit.
but it's like it's learning about like the self through also looking at astrology, And then it's like also the Chinese system. I can't remember if it's called the Qigong or something like that. And then the Jewish Kabbalah. And it's like all these different places, right? And it's like Eastern practices from, thousands and thousands of years old. And like in the Western world, we just kind of like disregarded it. And especially going to India, right? And I was just like, oh my goodness, there's like so much knowledge and power here that we have just completely disregarded. So the combination of psychology and spirituality, and hence why like Dr. Nicole LePera, when she started sharing about her own journey and learning about how powerful spirituality is, she got so much criticism from other psychologists and psychiatrists, right? Because it's like, that's not science, and a lot of this stuff is like, it's hard to like prove from a scientific perspective, like, but when you see it happen it's like the manifestation, right? It's like, how do you prove that you've manifested that, right? Like, is it just luck, right? But then when you see hundreds of people have that happen to them when they follow this certain path, like that to me is science, in a way. And so yeah, it's really combining those two things, which I think is one of the most powerful ways for us to become the best versions of ourselves.
Oh,
And also, I just wanted
absolutely.
to add too, oh yeah, I was just gonna say too about San Pedro. It's so funny because I just that was my heart opening ceremony recently. So I love that
Amazing.
came full
Yes,
circle.
please share.
um, yeah, I so talking about a couple friends of mine have Parker and Zachary have started a church here in Lockhart, Texas, which is half an hour south of Austin. And there was land about 150 acres donated by Aubrey and Vylana Marcus for this church. And so it's very brand new. But one of the medicines that are being served is Wachuma, San Pedro. And funny enough, like I just wrote in my newsletter last night about meeting San Pedro for the first time, which is back in 2009 when I was in Peru. And just to give a little bit of a background, I didn't get to this part of the story yet because I'm like, I realized I didn't journal back then, so I had nothing in writing, right? And so I was just telling this story recently as like, because like when I think about when my spiritual journey started, like I often say in 2016 when I first went to India, but like just this morning I was thinking like, oh, but in 2009 is when the sprinkles like started. Because when I decided to do a gap year, right? Because all my Australian, Irish, English friends, like in America, we don't know what a gap year is, right? Like times have changed since then, but for the most part, it's not very common for us to take a year off in between, college and working, or to like live overseas, to travel, to just take a break and like get life experience. And I was like, what is this? I want to do this. And so I met up with my friends in my Irish friend Claire, who's actually going to be in Austin very soon, and my other American friend who went to USC with me, Sarah. And we had just finished Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and we're in South America. And we're like, okay, where are we going to go? So Claire messages 10 of her friends because she's Irish. A bunch of her friends like wrote back of like, go to Machu Picchu, go to Carnival, go to the Salt Flats, the typical things that you do when you go to South America. Sarah and I, being American at that time, and we both like had no one to ask. None of our friends had been to any of those places. Anyway, Claire gets one email that like just got all of our attention, and it was like a couple lines, and it was like, go to Haraz in the way in, ask for Alex and ask for San Pedro. It was the most enlightening experience in my year abroad. And that's all he said, right? And we're like, we're going there.
Nice hook.
And that was like, you know what? And back then, like, I like didn't know. I thought it was okay. I thought it was like, oh, when you go to China, you drink green tea. You go to Peru, you drink San Pedro. That's like, I didn't know it was like a plant medicine or anything like that. And when we were in the center, the way in, Alex, it's such a beautiful, beautiful place. Like in the top of these mountains, nothing around you, this beautiful lodge. And there was like a half-built lodge. And I asked him, what is that? And he's like, oh, I'm building an ayahuasca center. And so like that was like my first introduction to any of that. And he actually recommended a place for us to go in the Amazon, right? But he gave me really good advice back then of like, being female, like, anyone really is like, you have to be really, really, really careful with who you sit with, because there's a lot of, great medicine people serving, shamans, but there's also a lot of people who kind of take it for granted, take advantage of it, or just, use it in a dark way. So that was like something that always stuck with me. And I've always been super careful and, like would only go somewhere that was recommended. And I did most of those journeys in South America, and I've also had an amazing experience at Saltara in Costa Rica as well. And with San Pedro, like I tried it a couple years ago again, and it's a very light medicine and very heart opening. And back then I was like, yeah, it's okay. Like when I did it again, I was like, and I've dabbled a lot in this space, so I've tried nearly everything, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. And it wasn't until last 2 weeks ago. So my friends are starting, like it hasn't been officially announced yet, and they're just kind of doing it with friends and family, trialing a few things, and they had a weekend and a week retreat in January, and in February they were having their weekend one, and I was like, yep. Well, I came a couple weeks before that to help prepare the medicine, and I was like, okay, I'm coming down, and I convinced a couple people I knew to come down as well, and we had such a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. Zachary and Parker are just powerful individuals, right? And Park, I don't know if you've heard of Spirit Quest in Peru, but Don Howard is Aubrey Marcus, one
Don
of his
Howard. Yeah, I've
spiritual
heard of
teachers.
Don Howard
Yes,
because Jason and Megan, Jason was studying with him, right?
yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
so he unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, but um, so Parker had actually was an apprentice of Don Howard in at Spirit Quest, and so he's like such a conscious person. And then he told me when I got to the retreat that Zachary, he's like, there's three of the most conscious people I know. It's like Don Howard's sister, and Zachary, right? And Zachary was there as well, and I met him, and after I was there for the weekend retreat, which was so powerful, I was like, I decided to stay for the week-long retreat. So it was 3 days. I ended up staying there for 11 days and doing 4 ceremonies. And I like have such a deep reverence for the medicine now. And I really understand like the subtleness of the medicine, because they say ayahuasca is like grandmother, right? And it's like the chaos, and it's like you don't know what you're gonna get, right? And it's like, and sometimes, and I think in this space people get really caught up in like, oh, I want to see the lights and the glamour and the glitz, and like what are the big downloads and the profound like messages, right? And I know like with Aya, like you get so much, but for some people that could be very paralyzing, and depending on the type of trauma that you've had, or like it's like whoosh, here's all this information, or and someone said during the retreat, it's like Aya teaches you how to die, right? And it's like, so it's a lot, but to like make actual change, like to integrate that, it takes a lot of work, and sometimes it could be too paralyzing because you're like, where do I start? Whereas with Wachuma, so like Aya teaches you to die, and this perspective was like, yeah, Wachuma teaches you how to live, right? And sometimes, like oftentimes, living is a lot harder than dying, right? Because you look out, outside and see so many people who are like sleepwalking through life, not fully alive, not fully appreciating the beauty of the world. And like it's such a gentle medicine. And like the whole week was like, we start at the underworld, which is like the serpent, and it's like the sacral and root chakras. And then like in 2 days, like we then go to, and that's, yeah, the serpent. And then we go to the Pachamama, and that's like the jaguar, right? And it's like the jaguar, the smiling jaguar is like represents spirit quest, and it's like the jaguar is so present with life, right? So he's got to be smiling. And then it's like working your way up, ascension to the upper world, and it's like the eagle. So it's like, and like doing breath work on it was like one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And like it just blew my mind. And I'm like now like telling, I love like that there's a center here in the US that, and they have brought with them the spirit of the Shavine culture, which is where Wachuma like has been cultivated for thousands of years. And they bring that with them here. And there's such reverence and sacredness of the medicine. And so I like came back from that with light. And that's what you're talking about, your heart being wide open. And I feel you with that. Like my heart feels so open. And now like I have like actual like actionable small steps to take forward with me to like really help with my transformation.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like it's really on point because we start with heart opening and we end with heart opening. And I feel like for me, Wachuma was also very much about heart chakra and just working on this um, relationship with the masculine energy as well, because it's grandfather. And so a lot of stuff that were in the heart were just like released when I did it, because I did 3 ceremonies with Jason and Megan at that time in Costa Rica, 3 in a row every
Ah,
week. And so for me, it was also a very, very amazing and opening experience. And so for everyone who maybe feels called to it, find a shaman that you really can trust, or find these guys that we are talking about because they are awesome, and really, really
bridge to one. Yeah, it's
try
called
it,
bridge to one.
because yeah, because really it can
Or
be
with some of the
very
guys. And
very amazing for all of us, really. If we open our hearts, if we can connect on our hearts, we can activate other people's hearts as well, and then we wouldn't have any wars going on in the world if just everyone could just open their heart, right? So maybe this is how we can start the change from us and open our own hearts, so that then this peace and love in us can spill over the whole collective consciousness. And I feel like this is what we should do right now, especially in present times going on. So I'm really inspiring here to do this. And so one last little question to you: where could people find you? What's the best way to contact you if they really like your vibe? Because I'm sure that they do. I love your vibe, and if they would like to check it out, what the psychospiritual transformation is, how they can find you.
probably the best way right now is on my Instagram. It's Jenn, JENN_K_Lee, Lee. And you can find my link tree there, and you can book a call with me. I'm in the works of getting my website up and running, but also Eric Godsey's journaling course, you could find it there. And if anyone has any questions or wants to have a chat, like feel free to DM me. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for everything you've shared. It was very valuable to me. So I'm sure to our listeners it's going to be super valuable as well. And I'm just so grateful that we could connect so deeply and talk about all this stuff, because, yeah, it's so funny when you don't know someone online and then you just figure out that you have so many common friends and so many common experiences as well. So, yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to be with us today and to share your beautiful energy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And I think that this is such an amazing thing that you're doing for the rest of the world and getting this information out there, because this is the heart is the way to making big change on the earth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate
Mm.
you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, beautiful people, for listening to us. If you'd like to find me, I'm The Connection Catalyst on Instagram. So contact me if you need an thing and trauma to go through, or if you have any questions, or maybe if you want to be interviewed on the podcast. And for now, stay tuned to the next episode. And I'm sending you much, much, much love from my heart straight to yours.